Okay, we're logged in as operator 1 and we have our case available. I'll just run through some details about what this screen is all about. So it's actually really a split screen. The top half here is, I guess, the queXS part, and the bottom half here is your questionnaire Lime survey part. You'll notice here we've got the respondent's name, so that came from the sample list. Oops, I'll just show you just to remind you. So that's come from this record here. If we click on show details, if you remember when we imported the sample, we wanted to show the operator the postcode variable, and we've done that. That's there, and we can hide that for now. So this is really just to remind the telephone interviewer who we're talking to. This case ID is very important. That's the way this particular respondent is going to be identified, on this particular project is going to be identified, and that's something that can be used to communicate to your supervisor or for us to be able to reference the case in the queXS backend. The other important details here are the current date and time. Up here it's the current date and time for you as the interviewer, and that's the time for the respondent, which may be different. Here we have a little tabbed item here, just with details about the project and also about this particular case. One thing that telephone interviewers find useful is to be able to leave notes about the current case they're on. So you can add a note here. For example, I've just added this note here. This is my first case for testing. And you'll see here that it just records the date and time, who the person who made the note was, and the note. You can imagine this is quite useful for interviewers if they need to remind future interviewers who might call this case some particular details about them that might be relevant. Okay, we've also got a list of calls that are made in the past for you for this particular respondent. There hasn't been any calls yet. We've got a list of shifts that are available for this project, so you can see we've got today's shift from 9 till 8:30 p.m. Tomorrow's from 5 till 8:30, so just to remind the interviewer when work is available. If any appointments have been made for this case, there haven't been any yet. An overview of the performance for you as an interviewer, how many calls you make per hour, for example, how many completions you've made per hour, and that's just you're able to compare yourself against other interviewers on the project. Got a list of the work we've done, which isn't anything at the moment, any appointments we've got coming up. This details about the project, which we'd loaded up when we set up the questionnaire, and any information about this particular center. So the default screen you see is the notes screen, because that's what interviewers tend to like to see if a previous interviewer has made a note about this case. Okay, now the typical procedure for a telephone interviewer is basically it's a lot of clicking this call hang up button. The reason being it will always bring up the next most appropriate action. So if they click on call hang up here, we get to choose from 2 phone numbers to call, and they came from this list here. Now, because we are set up in a way where we'd have to manually dial this number, here's now, by clicking call here, it's not actually going to call this number. I don't have the voice integration set up for this test, but by clicking call now, let's imagine that this phone number is being called. Okay, so what will happen now is the status screen has changed to show that we're currently trying to make the call. And we're able to proceed with the script. So at the moment, this is just a test. So we've got the initial test screen here. So we'd imagine that let's imagine in this case that nobody answers this call. So in this case, we'd click call hang up again, and we'd set the outcome of this call to being no answer. Okay, so you'll see the status has changed to no call. And if we look at the, oops, that's, here we go. You can see now that in our call history for this case, we did try and make a call at 11:02. There was no answer to that call. Now, if we go to call hang up again, we're left with only one number to call because we've already tried the first one. Let's try calling this number again. Okay, we've got the script ready to say what we need to say if the person answers. But in this case, we're going to assume that the person hasn't answered again, which is quite common in telephone interviewing, unfortunately. So let's mark this as no answer, and let's see what happens. So we've got a note here that we're not currently on a call, so there's nothing to display. This call history will update shortly, but we're still currently sitting on this case, even though we've called both the numbers available and they both haven't answered. So again, we can choose to try and call and hang up again, and we're going to get sent with this message here. This call attempt has been completed. So we've tried calling them, they didn't answer both times. So we've got options of what to do next. We can either end the case, which means this case number 1 will be closed for now, and if there's a new one for us to try and call, that'll come up. Ending work would mean that we're finished for the day and no more. Don't try and schedule the next case for me. But we're going to move on to the next one. So we're going to choose end case. And now you'll note we're on to case number 2. There are no notes here because this case hasn't been called yet. There's no calls made. But if I look at my work history, you'll see that I've made 2 calls which both had no answer for case ID 1, because that's my personal work history as a telephone interviewer, but the call into history for this case is empty because no calls have been made. Okay, let's see how we can create an appointment now.